Hello, and welcome to this evening's Empower Hour. And now we believe it's important to do the land acknowledgement. We acknowledge with respect as non-native people that the land on which we stand, live, and learn is the traditional territory of the Ute, Cheyenne, and Arapaho peoples. Let us seek to understand what it means to be in right relationship today with the traditional stewards of this land and with this land itself and with all the creatures that inhabit it. Tonight, our agenda is as follows. We're going to start out with an update from EOF's Community Resilience Team about our local work, and then I'll introduce our guests, Bianchi Hughes and Moshe Kornfeld, just before they speak. My name is Mary Pettigrew. I am part of the Empower Our Future, Empower Our team, of course, but tonight I'm speaking to you as a member of EOF's Community Resilience Team. We are really excited that Clean Energy Group, this amazing national organization that works to advance clean energy and mitigate climate change through innovation in policy, technology, and finance, they were offering us basically a grant, and we did accept that challenge. We applied for the grant, we got the grant, and three of us have been working on this. Myself, Mary Pettigrew, I'm a graphic designer and owner of Ampersand Graphic Design, and I'm a longtime community climate activist. Jim Gilbert unfortunately can't join us tonight, but he is a retired medical device engineer who has turned his brain power to the electric grid and refers to himself as a community energy advocate. Scott Miller holds both a JD and MBA. He worked in law and big tech and is now committed to accelerating the equitable transition to affordable, reliable, clean energy. Scott is here this evening, and he may periodically jump in. Basically, the grant that we applied for in February is called the Clean Energy Incentive Navigator Grant. And I did want to mention that we worked with a wonderful woman named Anna Adamson. She was our direct contact at CG, and she was just terrific. This grant is a nationwide effort to advance affordable, renewable, and resilient power in communities that have historically been left out. Boulder received one of these grants, one of 6 in the US, and basically, the grant tasked us with creating educational materials to raise awareness and help people understand the value of solar plus storage for energy resilience, as well as for reducing utility bills. We were also tasked with identifying possible community hub locations, funding options, and industry vendors. So I'm going to spend a moment here on what is a resilience hub, just because there's a lot going on in this graphic, but it's a really terrific one from Seattle. Basically, a resilience hub is a community-facing organization and a building. This is not residential. It might be a health center, it might be a church or a community center. Essentially, once you add power like solar panels and battery backup, this building basically can reduce its utility bills as a result of that solar and storage. So 99% of the time, the resilience helps basically pay for the system. On those days, which we call gray sky days, when it might not just be a power outage, it might be high temps or really cold temps. A building, it also, of course, applies in an outage because this building would stay electrified. Basically, these resilience hubs are places that are known to be safe. They're known to the community. It's a location where you could charge your phone, store temperature-sensitive medications, plug in some sort of medical device that's reliant on electricity. So obviously, they're very important. Services offered at a resilience hub might include heat or cooling, a refrigerator, again, food services, possibly, maybe even sleeping if that were necessary. The reason these hubs are especially beneficial when located in disproportionately impacted communities in trusted locations is because these individuals are much more likely to be adversely affected by extreme weather and power outages, and they often have a harder time recovering from these events. So again, just to clarify, we are not talking about the official emergency locations that the city and the county would be responsible for. We are talking about community resilience, i.e., a building with solar and storage that continues to operate during extreme weather and when the power's out. Community hubs determine the services that they offer and the extent to which they're made available. Really, truly, hubs can do what they choose in terms of how they can provide assistance. And what we hope is that over time, these services available and the community outreach evolve and expand. So when we started this process, we felt that it was important to talk to all of the entities that probably were already actively involved in this. So you can see that list there. I won't read that. We talked with a bunch of organizations, tried to understand where there are already efforts being made. We talked to community umbrella groups, community serving groups, such as nonprofits. Obviously, we wanted to make connections in the targeted communities and in the business community. Basically, we want to take a special mention, make special mention of a community connection that was really terrific in that we met Isabel Sanchez, who is the leader of the Mapleton Home Association HOA, and she was very understanding of what we were trying to do because it's kind of amazing. She is an emergency preparedness trainer. So she gets this, and she has provided training to the manufactured housing community. And we just really liked her, felt like we were on the same wavelength and understood each other's needs and interests and goals. And I'm really pleased to say that mid-month, we applied with MHA for an Oscar Equity Grant for individual resilience and community resilience. And here you can see examples of those. Individual resilience kits would go to each individual homeowner in the manufactured housing park, and the community resilience would be solar and storage added to a community building that exists in the HOA, and then installation of a semi-permanent structure such as a yurt to act as a community center that would be powered by that solar and storage. I would imagine that it might be used something like 99% of the time as a meeting place, or, we'd let the community will obviously figure that out. But regardless of what happens in terms of the grant, we really look forward to working with Isabel and the MHA community to increase their energy resilience. So here again, I'm going to not go on too much. You can read this. We obviously wanted to talk to all kinds of folks in the business community as well, folks who are adept at designing solar and battery systems, people who could provide financial analysis of cost savings of a potential system, vendors like Namaste and other solar providers, and then funding sources. And of course, collaborative partners like Colorado Jewish Climate Action. And again, we'll be hearing from Moshe not long from now. We're almost here. One of the other things we really want to do is basically work with the city and county on highlighting areas in our region that would benefit from resilience hubs. So this map that we envision would have existing and planned city and county emergency resilience centers, but then also it would indicate lower income and those disproportionately impacted communities so that we could essentially better see where resilience is lacking. Because New Orleans and their Lighthouse project was such an inspiration to us, that was really part of the reason we wanted to have somebody from there talking to us tonight. And again, you'll be hearing from Bianchi momentarily. Basically, the Clean Energy Group grant was a great seed that sparked our interest and enthusiasm about resilience hubs. We want to take the next steps. We really essentially, of course, at this incredibly challenging time in terms of funding in our country and our states and cities and everywhere else, we're hoping we can locate some additional funding to continue our work. It's possible the Clean Energy Group would grant us additional funds, maybe the city, the county, the state. Anyway, we'd love to be able to do capacity building, assessments, and ideally installations and get some pilot projects going. We'd like to create that map and continue building relationships in terms of potential resilience hub locations, system designers, installers, funders, etc., all while collaborating with government and local organizations to align and scale resilience hub efforts. At the moment, this page, empowerfuture.org/energy resilience, is not yet live, but it will be by end of week. Check out the website for those resources. Also, we will have some community resilience team office hours beginning next week. The Calendly link is this rather long one. And I just want to encourage you, if you know of a great potential resilience hub location, would you want to learn more about any part of this project? Do you know of a great vendor you want to recommend? Please feel free to contact us via the empowerourfuture.org website or sign up using that Calendly link. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much. Scott Miller, you were remarkably silent during the presentation. How about anything you wanted to add in terms of the community resilience team and our work?
Yeah, thanks, Mary. Well, I thought you covered it pretty well, so I didn't have to interject. But one thing I'd like folks to see is the complexity of trying to figure out which venues are the most capable of being these electronic energy resilience centers, and then going through the steps of they are interested all the way to getting a shovel-ready project that has already gone through the stages. And I'll just go through the stages real quick so people get an appreciation of the ecosystem of partners that we've been talking to, learning from, and pulling in so that we have a program when we approach the venues. To start, the venues could be houses of worship like churches or synagogues, manufactured home parks like the Mapleton Home Association Mary mentioned, senior and affordable housing, community centers, anywhere folks naturally aggregate as part of a community, whether because they're members there and they're paying, or because they're members and they don't pay, or they just live around the community and it's a trusted place. So that's step one, is talking to tens and 20s of these potential resilience hubs. once they're interested, you have to go through a process of saying, hey, like, what are you interested in doing? What what kind of resilience hub do you want to be? Do you want to be a resilience hub just for your community and try that out first, and then expand to the extra geographical community that lives around you? Do you have to go through that? You also have to say, hey, do you want to keep your whole building on if the power is out? Because you probably don't need your whole building, right? You probably want a common center, a community center, one big room. You probably want a bunch of plugs. You probably want to have refrigerators and availability for people to plug in their phone chargers and their medical equipment. So you have to go through the process, and it takes time because a lot of times people haven't thought about it. The second part of what is helpful to know as you're talking to potential resilience hub venues is that you have all these different business partners you also have to talk to and understand. First, once a community center, for example, says, "Yeah, I'm ready to be a resilience hub," you have to talk to a company who knows how to design the right amount of solar and battery storage for them, depending on the services they want.
And now, the guest you've been waiting for. Bianchi Hughes serves as Director of Disaster Response for the City of New Orleans. Before stepping into this role, she worked with the city in emergency management, gaining valuable experience in coordinating response efforts. She's a lifelong oh boy, I may have to ask you to pronounce that, Bianchi, New Orleanian?
Yeah.
Orleanian? She is deeply committed to protecting and strengthening her community in the face of disasters. Thank you so much, Bianchi, for joining us tonight. I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Mary. Hello, everybody. My name is Bianchi Hughes, and today I'm going to start off with sharing why I'm so passionate about disaster response. So my story starts about 20 years ago. As y'all all know, I'm a New Orleanian, and so 2 days before Hurricane Katrina hits New Orleans, my dad goes into the hospital. He has a massive heart attack. And at the age of 9, I am there to translate for my mother who doesn't like speaking English. We evacuate from New Orleans through a long trial of tribulations. And on our way out, we realized that my mom had gotten my dad's phone, had taken it from him. And so once we arrived at our destination, we thought we could call back to the hospital, and that wasn't really possible. We waited 5 days without knowing where he was or what was going on, if he was still in New Orleans or somewhere else. And after those 5 days, we did get to hear back from my dad, and he was airlifted to Houston. And so through my story, I have learned a lot of if there was a community lighthouse or a resilience hub in New Orleans or in the surrounding areas across the state, maybe we could have had a different story or outcome. And that's why today I'm here to talk about Together Louisiana and specifically an introduction to the Community Lighthouse Initiative. So Together Louisiana is a statewide network comprised of many sister organizations across the state. And it's comprised of more than 250 religious congregations and civic organizations united in our commitment to building a stronger, safer communities across the state. Today, like I said, we're introducing the Community Lighthouse Initiative, which has one simple but very ambitious vision. In our city, no one should be more than a 15-minute walk from a community lighthouse. And in our rural areas, no one should be more than a 15-minute drive. So what we have seen and what we know is that power outages are the leading cause of disaster-related deaths in Louisiana and the Gulf Coast. Community Lighthouse aims to stop those preventative tragedies. Here are some real examples of how disruption of critical services, specifically power outages, have cost lives. During Hurricane Laura in Southwest Louisiana, 19 people lost their lives because of lack of power. In the winter freeze of 2021, across Texas, about 700 people died, many because they were left without heat or electricity. And in the aftermath of Hurricane Ida, 23 of the 26 people who lost their lives, not from wind, not from flooding, but from power being out. These tragedies show us just how dangerous and deadly a failure to our energy infrastructure can be. Here is a slide of those civic organizations that come together to build together New Orleans, and it grows from there to build together Louisiana. And so it was the aftermath of Hurricane Ida that 250 faith, community, and civic organizations known as Together Louisiana came to some clear conclusions. We cannot wait for our city to solve this problem. 2, we cannot wait for the utilities. 3, we cannot wait on FEMA. And that's why they chose to act.
After Hurricane stopped acting like somebody else was going to solve this.
The grid was down for weeks again.
People died from the heat again.
It was the poor and vulnerable who suffered most again.
So we decided to stop waiting for someone else and to create the plan ourselves.
Network of Community Resilience Hub with solar power with backup capacity.
We engaged experts.
We found champions, including some in high places.
And in 2 years, we built the largest network of renewable resilience hubs in the world. Community Lighthouse strategy has 4 components.
Every neighborhood identifies a local organization which gets solar panels and batteries so it can operate even when the grid goes down.
These microgrids upgrade our utility system with renewable energy. My church cut its emissions by 90%.
Each lighthouse builds a team which engages the community and creates a response plan.
We create jobs. We're training our local residents to fill them.
I did about 8 years in prison. Local 130 gave me an opportunity to change my life, and I haven't looked back.
Gulf Futures Challenge proposal will take Community Lighthouse to scale, building 75 new resilience hubs and bringing a lighthouse to 95% of disadvantaged communities.
From the top down, you can change a policy, but from the bottom up, we've got a chance to change the world.
So in 2 years, we've developed 17 sites so far, making it the largest network of renewable resilience hubs in the country. And here are some of our sites. Here you can see Bethlehem Lutheran Church, Broadmoor Community Church, and as you can see, each location has a different configuration, a different number of how many solar panels are on top of the community lighthouse. Some even have their solar panels on the ground, such as Cornerstone. Another cool thing about this is our batteries are wrapped. So our system showcases that it's a community lighthouse. It has the mission clearly defined on these batteries. So if anybody were to go to the site and not realize that it is a community lighthouse, they could also read about it. It says how many solar panels are on top of the roof or that power this community lighthouse. It even tells you how many pounds of carbon dioxide per year is reduced at the site, how much the battery stores, or some of the details that you can see at these different community lighthouses. Now, the solar and the battery microgrids are, of course, one of the important parts of the strategy that grabs the headlines, all the information and how we are known. But the truth is that without social capital, none of this would be possible. Because technology itself doesn't organize people. Technology doesn't open the doors to churches, recruit volunteers, or check in on the elderly neighbor when the lights go out. What makes the microgrids matter is that the human infrastructure around them, the relationship of trust, the networks of congregations, neighborhood associations, and civic groups that know their communities inside and out. It's those relationships that allow for the power from the solar microgrid to be translated into life-saving action. A cooled room and refrigeration for medicine for someone with health conditions, or a charging station for families cut off from communications. A safe space where neighbors can gather and not be alone in the dark. The hardware matters, but without the social fabric, it is just hardware. With social capital, it becomes a lifeline. And so for us, our strategy, that means step one, we identify a trusted civic institution in every neighborhood with a turf. A turf meaning a geography for which they feel responsible for. Each lighthouse gets to choose their turf. Step two, the lighthouse builds a team of lighthouse keepers, leaders from that institution who build their strategy for its community. So that means each team looks different. There are some basic components, but they get to add and take away what feels right for their community. Step three, that team canvasses door to door every year to get its relationships with vulnerable neighborhoods and re-anchor themselves in that neighborhood. So it's not just about talking to vulnerable neighbors, it's talking to everybody. That means the businesses, the local community, the health center that might be there, so that it knows that there is a community lighthouse there. That deepening of those relationships may create a larger program in that neighborhood. Step four, the team develops its site plan and response strategy. So that site plan looks different, like we said. It could be from what kind of vehicles you can't drive into certain parts of the city. What makes sense if it's closing a little bit earlier or opening a little bit earlier. We sit with them and look at that through their site plans. Step five, they take part in our lighthouse keeper training. This is a training that is done annually where not just the lighthouse keepers of a specific region of the state come together, but the entirety of the state trains together and learns from lessons from the South of Louisiana, learns lessons of the North or in the middle, different disasters and how that affects, but still has the same core components of training. And then our sixth part of our strategy is the lighthouse keeper trains and cope strategy for mental wellness. That is especially true for the people that are comprised of the team and then expanding to other volunteers that are coming in. And so taking care of our mental health and wellness first to then be able to help others. This is a slide of what our first test in Hurricane Francine in September of last year. These are our lighthouses that activated. And so within 12 hours of hurricane, 9 community lighthouses opened up, providing food, water, mini batteries, internet, charging stations, and oxygen. Here's what they did. So as I said, 9 lighthouses open. They served 2,300 people. They provided 1,800 meals, distributed about 4,000 bottles of water, reached out to 154,000 people, conducted needs assessments or needs surveys with 1,995 people, deployed over 16 smaller batteries to different households, and organized over 100 volunteers for this response. And here's a video of what a community lighthouse or resilience hub looks like.
The sun, it knows the sun, I stay, it's alright. It knows the sun, it knows the sun, I stay, it's alright.
Now, keep in mind, this neighborhood is without power, and the site is operating entirely off the grid. So here is a visual example of their plans. Here you can see that there are standing roles and flexible roles. It is intentionally very simple board that is put up in each one of these institutions where people can see it. It is used for visibility and for people to know that this is one of the other missions that they have at their church or their union. And to recognize that not every role has been committed to, or seeing where does somebody want to walk in and try to fill those roles. Now, as we know, these are civic organizations that are also comprised of other organizations or other missions that go on day to day. So there might be another group that shares that space that might not be aware of the community lighthouse, but by having this board up and visible, it helps to recruit other people to feel ownership of the roles or bring in more people to be able to be a part of this plan, even thought partners, or to get the word out. Oh, did you know that such and such community lighthouse is in your neighborhood? Just by simply having that board up. And this is one way that we show our plans. And to close, I want to leave y'all with this. The community lighthouse strategy is not just about surviving the next hurricane. It's about transforming how we care for each other every day. Yes, it is a disaster response, but it is also deeper, long-term work, tackling social determinants of health, making sure neighborhoods are connected, supported, and resilient. When we invest in community lighthouse networks, we're not just keeping the lights on. We're creating communities where no one is left isolated, where neighbors are known by name, and where trust is stronger than fear. That is not just a disaster strategy. It is a social capital strategy. And ultimately, it's a vision for what a safer, more connected Louisiana can look like. So thank y'all for your time.
Thank you, Bianchi. We so appreciate your being here, and what an inspiring story, and also your resilience in terms of tech challenges and sticking with it. Thank you. Now I'd like to introduce Moshe Kornfeld, the founder and director of Colorado Jewish Climate Action. He has studied at many institutions of higher Jewish learning and holds a PhD in cultural anthropology from the University of Michigan. He has taught courses on American Jewish life and on the intersections of religion, environmentalism, and politics at Washington University in St. Louis, CU Boulder, and the University of Denver. Moshe lives in Denver, Colorado with his wife Rachel and their 2 children. Thank you, Moshe, for joining us.
So good to be here today. As Mary said, my name is Moshe Kornfeld, and I'm the founder and executive director of Colorado Jewish Climate Action. I actually wrote my dissertation based on research I did in New Orleans. So it's fun to connect different strands of my life today. Colorado Jewish Climate Action is building a Jewish and interfaith climate movement here in Colorado. We work with secular, interfaith, and frontline allies and pursue just solutions to the climate crisis. Our focus areas include education, advocacy, greening institutions, and youth empowerment. Our primary work is to organize within the Jewish community. However, when we move past this base, we're eager to build an interfaith climate coalition here in Colorado to bring new people and organizations to the climate movement. Inspired by Together Louisiana's Community Lighthouse initiative, CJCA decided to explore what it might take to develop climate resilience hubs here in Colorado. And one of our amazing leaders, Meryl Glustrom, connected us with Empower Our Future, and we're excited to be on this shared journey with y'all. I'd like to share a few thoughts about why I'm so excited about climate resilience hubs. First, they operate at the nexus of climate mitigation and adaptation. They deploy renewable energy while also building community and develop resilience infrastructure. I'm also particularly excited about building climate resilience hubs in houses of worship and in other community-based centers. These institutions can serve as models that inspire and educate the communities they serve. They can also play an important role in building the climate movement. As we all know, the climate movement is not nearly powerful enough in Colorado or anywhere. Climate work should not be partisan. And my hope is that building a network of climate resilience hubs and engaging communities of faith can help undo the partisan logics that are being exploited by the oil and gas industry. We must build a movement that is broad and powerful enough to sideline fossil fuel interests and deploy clean energy at the scale that science and justice demand. I'd like to close with a short reflection on the concept of sanctuary. And here I mean the literal building, like a sanctuary at a house of worship or something like that. So I often wonder how and why communities come together to build houses of worship, to build sanctuaries. These are often large projects that are built at great effort and great expense. Think about all the time, energy, money, and community building that it takes for a group of people to achieve this type of goal. Coming together as a community in support of a higher purpose is at the center of what it means to be human. It represents human flourishing at its finest. And this is ultimately what we need to do in order to turn the tide when it comes to climate change. When we witness our federal leaders take a hatchet to climate progress, we cannot sit idly by. We must make a commitment to rebuilding our sanctuaries, our power, and our movement. We must do this work as individuals, but more importantly, as communities, as parishes, and as congregations, as groups of people coming together to uplift themselves, their cities, their states, and ultimately our beautiful life-sustaining planet upon which we are all ultimately dependent. This is my ultimate dream for what climate resilience hubs can achieve here in Colorado. I hope we can all work together to make it so. Thanks so much.
Great. Thank you so much, Moshe. Appreciate your comments, and we really are glad you could be here tonight and look forward to collaborating with you. Chris Hoffman is going to tell us if there are any questions in the Q&A. Chris,
Yeah,
go
so
ahead.
the first question we have, and I'm not, I think this is probably directed at Bianchi, is the question is, how large is the community building? And I think maybe you could just talk about the one we saw in the video and then others on your network.
So each location varies. So for example, there is a federally qualified health center, and that resilience hub, community lighthouse functions as still a medical center, and it has a floor dedicated to food services and a place for people to cool off. But then the one that we saw in the video is a smaller location. As you could see, it's a fellowship hall. We're not trying to make large stadiums or places resilience hubs. We're trying to make it manageable because we still have people who are maybe traumatized or just not as familiar with disaster response running these sites. And we have to think about crowd control. So you don't want too large of a location. So most places typically hold about 50 to 100 people, and it's in a fellowship hall, or the lobby of a union is another one.
The next question is again for Bianchi. And did you seek funding at one center at a time, or did you sell the whole state or parish on the entire concept to get started?
So it initially started off as a pilot program with the 17 community lighthouses. And a lot of the initiative was easier to kind of sell because there is this understanding of disasters. So when a disaster does hit New Orleans, we become an island. And so there is that want to be preventative in the measures. So that kind of made it easier to start there. But then even in my story, there is a need for when we evacuate New Orleans, where do we go? That connecting aspect. And I think that's really what is highlighted with having statewide connection and then eventually a Gulf-wide connection of how do I evacuate to the next state. So they started off with that. They pitched that. They got federal money. And from seeing our infrastructure person in Congress allot that money, the local city government in New Orleans had also set aside money for the resilience hubs.
Great, thank you. Here's one. This may be for Scott as well as Bianchi, and maybe Moshe would have something to add too. I love the Resilience Hub concept. I know you're asking for support here in Boulder, in Colorado, but it would be wonderful to have something comparable to New Orleans here. What can we learn about how to get this going here?
Yeah, I'll take a stab at this. First of all, we love the concept of the Lighthouse New Orleans, and we want to copy it like word for word. We try with our efforts, we're trying not to put the cart before the horse. Like we have a bit of a vision that we have with a constellation of resilience hubs throughout Boulder County based on 2 or 3 kind of criteria. One is, where does the city already have energy resilience hubs? 2 is, as we work with the city and county, where are the disproportionately impacted folks living and concentrated, and how do we find resilience hubs there? And then the 3rd is, how do we kind of finish out the spoken wheel so that within Boulder County, in 15 minutes, if the electricity's out, your car is out, you can walk to a resilience hub. Now, we haven't mapped that out specifically, and we kind of think talking about that is nice and wonderful, but we've got to get our first resiliency hub like shovel ready and then installed and then serving the community. So we're trying to focus a bit more on learning the processes of finding the right community center, finding the right design firm, finding the right installer, finding the funding, which is harder now than it's ever been, and just get 1 or 2 hubs up that make great sense. They have established communities. They're already serving services that are really important for the community during extreme weather or power outages. And if we can extend their services to include energy, because they have solar plus battery and they have power when it's down, or it's cheap when it's really sunny in the summer, and people could go there instead of kind of being really hot in their manufactured homes, we'll build momentum. So in Boulder County, we're learning the process. We're kind of building the plane as we're building the wheels of the plane as we're flying it. But the big obstacle right now is funding for us. We're trying really hard to hit up every single city, county, state agency that has in the past giving funding. And like Mary said, we've applied for 1 grant that would be brilliant to cover our first resilience center, the Mapleton Home Association. We got to take 1 step at a time. I don't know who asked the question, but for everybody, if you have support, if you know contacts of potential resilience hubs, if you know contacts for firms who do design of solar and storage, once you know what the electricity bills are, and once you know what the Resilient Hub wants to offer their community, if you have contacts to installers like Namaste who sell batteries and solar and install it, if you have contacts for funding, I think it's the most important one, funding. And I'll include Moshe in this one, like Moshe's organization and us are working together, but they've got their own Resilience Hub opportunities as well, in a broader space than just Boulder County, like throughout Denver and the state. And that's it. Like we are working hard and we could also use your help for these contacts. So I hope I answered the question.
And so people, if they have any information related to that, they could send it in through our website, Empower Our Future website.
Yeah, or
Okay.
I'll shout out my email address. It's scottpaulmiller@gmail.com. And Mary, you can include that in the follow-up email. And we can include the list of types of contacts that are most helpful. And we're looking to build community as we're doing this.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So here's the next one. It could be for any one of the three of you. The question is, can an HOA create a resilience hub comprised of most homes in the if the HOA has solar panels and home batteries? Is this acceptable to the Public Utilities Commission?
Sorry, no.
Mary.
And
Paul
Paul's gonna
Coleman, let's get Paul kind of
Yeah.
called in to answer that though.
Yeah, since I do live in an HOA and I do have solar and batteries and my house stays lit up when the other houses around me go dark, it's entirely doable today to be your own resilience hub. What's not allowed by Colorado state law is I can't share electricity with my neighbors. So I couldn't use my batteries to light up my neighbors' lights or run their refrigerator. That's illegal in Colorado. And that's something we need to work on.
I'll just add, Paul, like while it is illegal and you can't do it, and I'm not suggesting anyone does it, it's a wonderful idea. And if you think of multiple buildings with solar and storage, in the future, sometimes sharing that electricity, sharing the sun's electrons that have been stored in the batteries, it's a good idea, but it is definitely something very forward looking. We're focusing on one building at a time.
And I will add to that. Down here, we're looking at different options, universities to try to do that. We actually have a convent in New Orleans that where the sisters, so it's a little bit different than an HOA. The Sisters of the Holy Family, and they live on the second and third floors, but the first floor is their fellowship or their resilience hub, their community lighthouse. And then we're also looking at, it's great to have solar, but then how do we mobilize those batteries? So I think tying that in, just planting that seed of, okay, you have this, how do we harvest that energy and mobilize it? Because down here, we know we're going to be affected in the summer, but up north, we know it's mostly winter. So how do we harvest that from all these buildings, if they have surplus, because they all do have a surplus of that battery, and move it across the state, but also the Gulf eventually.
And Bianchi, I just have to represent Jim Gilbert, who's not here, because the answer that he would say, like really proudly, is vehicle to load services. So when you have an EV that has a bi-directional capacity, and there's not tons out there right now, but the Ford F-150, the Nissan Leaf, the Ram Charger, there's several, and those vehicles could be in the South using solar to charge up, or just the grid at night, whatever it is, they could charge up where there's not an emergency. They could drive the 1 hour or 2 hours up north, and they can plug in to a building and they could charge up the batteries. It's a wonderful technology. Most utilities are still experimenting with how to take it on. If anyone from Excel is on the call or listening to this video, please stop dragging your feet here. We know it's doable. You just have to give us the standards so that every single electrician out there could hook up the bidirectional charger, the small battery, and have mobile storage, just like Beyonce said.
Thank you.
Footnote Jim Gilbert on everything I just said. I've learned a ton from him.
Okay. Here's another question, maybe for any one of you. Have you partnered with the Red Cross regarding setting up a lighthouse, or is the idea to be an effort not involving traditional aid organizations?
I'll jump in. So currently, we are formalizing MOUs with actually the American Red Cross. What we're really good at is canvassing and having our community lighthouse. But what I've seen working emergency management for the city of New Orleans is when an organization does too much outside of their lane, they're not really great at what they do. So part of being the community lighthouse or resilience hub is allowing for other people to also come in and people to benefit from that as well. So we are doing it's what it's called, it's a multi-agency or multi-feeding plan where it's not just directly the Red Cross coming in to feed, and we're looking at different scenarios. I will caution we are resilience hubs, so that means we have designated these locations for cooling and or heating during those extreme weather events, and only certain locations have decided to be shelters. So not to confuse that, and that is very important, especially talking to your local government or emergency management to clarify those expectations. We're here to provide relief throughout the day, because sheltering takes on a different look. And so, yes, so we're partnering not only with Red Cross, but also other groups, disaster relief groups that could help provide other supplies.
That's a really important clarification. Thank you for that.
I will just mention that locally, there was not any intentional lack of contact with the Red Cross. We just hadn't done so. And thank you so much for that suggestion. We'll follow up and find out what, that kind of a collaboration might be like.
One other question, and that's this one. Can you add more detail on the functions of a hub during blue sky days, since gray sky days are hopefully few and far between?
So unfortunately, down here in New Orleans, they are not far in between. But during normal times, blue skies, they're functioning as their union. They're continuing to, do work out of it, or their faith-based organization. So they're holding meetings. The neat thing that I don't think I touched really a lot about was as the solar power, the solar arrays and the solar panels are still collecting energy. And so they are getting benefits of sending that surplus either back to the grid or collecting that energy in the batteries. So everybody has savings that they have acquired from having these solar panels on top of their institutions. And the lights flicker all the time. So I have a pastor that has told us he was in the middle of a funeral service and the light flickered off, and everybody was like, "Pastor, what's going on? What's the holdup?" Not even 30 seconds later, he can continue to do his service because it took a 30-second time frame for his location to boot up. And then he was like, "And we're good."
That's great. That's great.
My question was for Bianchi. From the time you started and someone came up with the kind of helpful idea, like, hey, we should really start thinking about adding solar and storage, or we should really be more resilient during the times of the hurricanes. Like, how long did it take you guys in New Orleans to go from kind of thought to gathering a bunch of people, to meeting a bunch of people, to getting funding, to deploying your very first live resilience hub?
Okay. So there's two iterations. There's one, Hurricane Katrina hitting, and it's being like, okay, we rebuilt but how do we avoid that happening again? And then hurricane after hurricane hitting, and finally together New Orleans and its member organizations, specifically in New Orleans, was trying to rebrand and reformalize itself here as a group of organizations, broad base. And so that took about 4 years for them to do that. And then Hurricane Ida hit, and everybody was on board as to we need to do something. Like, how are we not, like, we're saying that we're doing this good work. What are we going to do? And so, after the aftermath of Hurricane Ida, is where really Community Lighthouse, where all those leaders got on a call, and they were like, what if we had solar instead of generators? How do we put that on one of our locations? And so that took about 6 months after them actually, and helped to really formalize together New Orleans. And then from there, they did a big July meeting 2022. And so, or 23. And so from there, they put on they had different members of city council, the federal government, kind of all there, and asking, like, do you commit to being a part of this? And they actually committed on the spot, you can tell. And there's a video on YouTube. Money, like, we knew Troy Carter was gonna commit some money, and then I think, like, the mayor was like, oh, we're gonna commit this much from this fund, and it was kind of like a bidding war unbeknownst to everybody. And from there, it took a while afterwards because money had to come in, but also deciding, like, what is the best first spot. So the first one, so the federal government, like, dollars invested in the community lighthouse, and then there was, like, the Department of Energy selected community lighthouse as one of their projects, their 14 national projects, to receive technical support under its energy storage for social equity initiative as well. So it took a while. It's not a quick thing. There's service agreements that need to happen, design, optimization. Some people think it's great. Oh, we can put the solar panels on this side. And it's like, well, you don't get the best benefits on that side. Can we do it the other way? And then each building is historic. So how do we walk around that? And then permits. So it can eat up time, but once you get the first one rolling, we have a list and a pipeline of people wanting to be a community lighthouse.
Great. Thanks for sharing that. It's very helpful and inspiring.
This is Julie. I'd like to ask a question. Sorry about my light situation being so weird. We are this project this team is working on has been pretty much outside of our municipal city efforts, and you have the terrible or beneficial silver lining of having terrible weather down there and really bad events all the time. And up here, it's somewhat proactive, and hopefully being able to be prepared for. We've had a few things that have been really bad. We've had fires, thousands of homes burned in a few hours. We've had flood, but we don't have, like, every single year just the really bad worst thing we know is going to happen in September or whatever. So do you have any suggestions of how to bring, I mean, it would be awesome if our city and county were able to donate funds or whatever. I mean, I don't know what our team, I'm not speaking for the team, I'm not on the team, but you got a commitment from your community and from your elected community, it sounds like. And so if you have any ideas about that, or if I don't know if it's better to continue to go solo, it just seems like we and your project has lots of small places that are operating, which was very interesting to learn about. And so anyway, if you have any suggestions, that would be awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, I was talking to actually another part of the team, and something I mentioned was prevention. I mean, you said it was prevention, and how no one foresaw Hurricane Helene hitting the Carolinas. And I think that was a very strong message that's still fresh in a lot of people's minds, and using that as an example to be like, we don't want to be like these other locations that do have these disasters. And then the Carolinas do not get, it was a storm, a rainstorm before the hurricane even hit, so it was really a fluke. But they're happening more and more. Maui could be another example, and using those places, like, nobody thought there was going to be a hurricane and a fire that takes out Lahaina. But being able to use that as like a preventative mitigation effort, and then getting very creative with it. So having that partnership, if you have an office of resilience, if you have an emergency management offices, locally first, or if state, but also understanding how they operate, what's their goals and interests, and then also working with them to see if there's funding around a lot of this. Actually, a lot of funding that continued to happen is in our Office of Resilience, through EPA grants, through other grants, instead of like our Office of Emergency Management. But that doesn't mean that somebody doesn't have the money and then the other office can come in with supplies or training. Um, so using the different, like, everybody is of use. Also, other disaster relief organizations might be funders for y'all as well. And then I really like, it's not just fires or natural, it's also the blizzards. I mean, there's a lot that goes on. And it's for us, like, for example, a not out of the box idea was involving the film industry when they went on strike. So their people weren't being used, and so they needed jobs. So it's like, how do you help provide not many, but some jobs to them, but also open up the conversation to see, like, we found out they have their own disaster response teams that cover the Gulf states. They're actually part of one of the ones in the pipeline that want solar on top of their building. But also, they also explained to us how funding gets sent, because it's in their interest to also get back to work, to have their people to get back to work. So their funders, their big Disneys and Pixars and all them, are also funding them to try to help restore their workers back to normalcy, so their job of filming can go back to normal. So it's really getting creative and not discarding each partner out of the equation.
Thanks a lot.
So the Lighthouse project is not just New Orleans. It's all the state, and it's becoming regional. It's how do you have the capacity to do this?
Great question. So it is across the state, and it's continuing to grow. Even we just put in a proposal for the Gulf states, so Texas, Florida, Alabama, Mississippi. So it's continuing to grow. But in Louisiana right now, we have organizations that are, so we have Together New Orleans, Together Baton Rouge, and North Interfaith Louisiana. And these are organizing organizations that fall under Together Louisiana. And so there's already somebody organizing around issues, and there is a common sentiment here across the state of disasters, a disruption of services and your life. And everybody is unified in this common problem, so everybody can connect, no matter if it's the top of the state or the bottom. And so they work around problems. So there's a main organizer, and I work with them to understand who are the people. I do a lot of the preparedness, creating the teams, consulting with the teams, making sure they get the right trainings, understanding if they're in, because people volunteer to be in these roles. And sometimes, for example, I had a person that wanted to be my head lighthouse keeper. So that person's over the entire team, but they live an hour away during normal time. And I was like, during a disaster, that hour drive becomes 2. And you have to be at the community lighthouse 2 hours before it even opens to prep and like just walking people through reality. And they're like, yes, but I can do it. And I'm like, okay, but how do we get a co-lead if you are running late or stuck in traffic or whatever? There's no gas. So short answer is I'm not taking ownership of everything. It's also empowering people during these blue sky days to take ownership of decisions and giving them the tools to be able to run that community lighthouse. Like I should not, if a person decides they're going to shut down the whole system, they should not be calling me to say, hey, we're shutting, can I shut down the system? They should be able to do it and then be able to be like, hey, we did this because of this, that autonomy at each level, but also checking in with each person. There's a lot of time blocking and organization of my calendar to make sure, and it's rotational. Like in the summers, it's mostly New Orleans. Right after that, in the fall, it is more Baton Rouge, and definitely in the winter, it is Shreveport. But it's also working around our schedule. Like our training is not going to be, the bulk of the training is not in the summer while we're in the midst of everybody worrying about our biggest disaster being a hurricane. So there's a lot of planning, short answer.
I want to just stop here and thank Bianchi, Moshe, and Scott for joining us tonight. I also want to thank the other members of the Empower Our Future communication team that are integral to making these Empower Hours happen. Paul Cullen, Chris Hoffman, Steve Whitaker, and Julie Zonizer are all important members of that team. And again, the Community Resilience Team webpage will be up by the end of the week at empowerourfuture.org/energy-resilience. And at that link, you'll be able to find the Calendly link to schedule a time to meet with one of the Community Resilience Team members. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you so much. This has been great.
Great.
Thanks, everyone.
Appreciate
Thank
our
you.
Take care.